The Monday executive briefing at Northbridge Dynamics had barely begun when Vanessa Carter leaned back in her chair with an exaggerated smile and pointed toward the plain silver ring on Claire Morgan's hand. "That's an interesting choice," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "It looks like something rescued from an old pawn shop, but I suppose vintage is fashionable again," causing several co-workers to hide uncomfortable expressions behind their coffee cups instead of defending the quiet operations manager. Claire simply glanced at the weathered ring for a brief moment before calmly folding her hands on the conference table, refusing to reward the insult with anger because she had learned years ago that silence often carried more power than the sharpest argument. While the meeting continued with endless discussions about budgets, forecasts, and client presentations, no one noticed that her steady gaze revealed the patience of someone who understood that time would soon answer every careless word spoken in that room. Claire had worked at the company for nearly 7 years without attracting attention, arriving before sunrise each morning, solving complicated operational problems before anyone else noticed them, and leaving quietly after ensuring every department functioned smoothly. Most employees viewed her as dependable but ordinary, never imagining that the calm woman who preferred spreadsheets over office politics carried a past connected to some of the most influential figures in international finance. Vanessa, however, had joined only a few months earlier after completing an expensive business program that seemed to impress executives far more than actual experience. And her confidence was strengthened by the fact that her uncle served as the company's chief executive officer. She loved being the center of attention, interrupted senior staff during meetings, treated assistants as though they existed only to serve her, and believed every room belonged to her the moment she walked inside. The ring Vanessa mocked was not valuable because of diamonds or precious metals, but because it represented a promise Claire had made to someone whose name had quietly shaped the business world without ever appearing in newspapers or television interviews. Later that afternoon, one of the company's oldest and most respected investors was scheduled to visit headquarters, and Claire knew the moment he recognized the unusual engraving on that forgotten-looking ring, the balance of power inside Northbridge Dynamics would change forever. The afternoon passed quietly until the private elevator opened, and Adrian Sterling, the legendary investor whose decisions could reshape entire industries overnight, stepped into the executive floor surrounded only by a single assistant carrying a leather portfolio. Every conversation faded into silence as employees watched him walk through the hallway with calm authority, unaware that a chance encounter was about to interrupt the carefully planned presentation prepared in his honor. Claire was returning from the records department with a stack of financial reports when Adrian suddenly stopped in the middle of the corridor, his attention fixed entirely on the worn silver ring resting on her hand, as though he had seen a ghost from another lifetime. His composed expression disappeared for the first time in decades, and in a quiet voice that carried unmistakable emotion, he asked, "Where did you get that ring?" While everyone nearby froze in stunned disbelief. "My father gave it to me before I began my career," Claire replied without hesitation, meeting his eyes with complete confidence instead of fear, and she gently added his name only after a brief pause that made the hallway feel completely still. The moment Adrian heard the name, every trace of color left his face because he instantly recognized it as belonging to the brilliant but mysterious businessman who had once rescued several collapsing corporations before disappearing from public life without leaving behind a single interview or official explanation. Instead of continuing toward the boardroom, Adrian quietly informed the executives that the presentation would have to wait because he needed to reconsider matters that suddenly carried far greater importance than quarterly profits or expansion plans. The senior leadership exchanged confused glances while Vanessa's confident smile slowly disappeared, replaced by growing anxiety as she realized the quiet colleague she had mocked only hours earlier possessed a connection powerful enough to change the mood of one of the world's most influential investors. Rumors spread across Northbridge Dynamics before the meeting had officially ended, with employees whispering in hallways, elevators, and break rooms about Claire's unexpected connection to a legendary financial figure whose legacy had become almost mythical among veteran business leaders. Claire ignored every curious glance and returned to her desk as though nothing unusual had happened, calmly reviewing operational reports with the same quiet professionalism, while the rest of the company struggled to understand why the future of the organization suddenly seemed tied to the woman they had overlooked for years. The following morning, the atmosphere inside Northbridge Dynamics felt completely different as executives who had barely acknowledged Claire for years now greeted her with unusual respect, while department heads suddenly invited her into discussions that had always taken place behind closed doors. Vanessa watched the change with growing frustration, unable to understand why one simple conversation had transformed the quiet operations manager into the most talked-about employee in the company. Inside the executive office, the chief executive officer received a confidential message from Adrian Sterling requesting a private meeting before any future business negotiations could continue, making it clear that the company's reputation now depended on answering several questions about its financial history. As old company archives were reviewed, forgotten documents revealed references to an anonymous investor whose emergency funding had quietly saved Northbridge Dynamics from bankruptcy nearly 20 years earlier. Yet the benefactor's identity had never been officially recorded. Later that afternoon, Adrian arrived again without reporters or public announcements and asked to meet Claire alone in one of the building's oldest conference rooms, where the walls were lined with photographs of former executives who had shaped the company's history. Looking directly at her, he admitted that her father had been one of the few business leaders whose integrity could never be bought, and he explained that the ring was a private symbol shared only among a handful of trusted partners who believed that reputation was worth more than wealth. Claire listened quietly before revealing that her father had never wanted his achievements celebrated because he believed true leadership was measured by the lives people improved rather than the headlines they created. She explained that after his retirement, he had asked her to build her own career without using his influence, encouraging her to earn every opportunity through honesty, discipline, and consistent hard work instead of family connections. Outside the conference room, Vanessa secretly tried to overhear the conversation, convinced that Claire must be hiding some unbelievable secret capable of changing everyone's opinion overnight. But she heard only brief fragments before security politely asked her to leave the restricted area. Walking back toward her office with growing unease, she finally realized that the woman she had dismissed as ordinary possessed a level of quiet confidence that could never be purchased with expensive degrees, fashionable clothes, or powerful relatives. Several days later, Adrian Sterling called a special meeting with the company's board of directors and explained that he would continue his partnership with Northbridge Dynamics only if the organization adopted a culture built on integrity, accountability, and respect instead of favoritism and personal influence. His announcement stunned every executive in the room because he openly praised Claire's professionalism, explaining that her quiet dedication represented the kind of leadership that could secure the company's future for decades to come. An independent internal review soon uncovered several management failures that had been ignored for years, including decisions influenced by personal relationships rather than merit. And Vanessa's repeated misconduct became impossible to overlook once employees felt safe enough to speak honestly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, senior leadership removed her from her management role and introduced new policies designed to ensure promotions would be earned through performance, ethics, and proven ability rather than family connections. Claire never celebrated anyone's downfall, or reminded her coworkers about the insults she had endured because she believed that true character was revealed by actions taken after victory, not before it. Instead, she continued performing her responsibilities with the same humility that had defined her career from the beginning, earning genuine respect from colleagues who finally understood that quiet strength often leaves the deepest impression. Months later, Northbridge Dynamics had become a stronger and more transparent organization, with teamwork replacing office politics and capable employees receiving the recognition they deserved regardless of their background or position. As Claire looked at the familiar silver ring that had once been mocked as worthless, she smiled softly, knowing its greatest value had never been the medal itself but the principles of honesty, patience, and courage that it represented through generations of her family. Every person who witnessed those extraordinary events carried away an unforgettable lesson that appearances can be deceiving, that humility often hides remarkable stories, and that respect should never depend on someone's wealth, title, or possessions because true greatness is revealed through integrity. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.